last time we started with discussing the let's say the basis of design thinking. We started with the concept. It's a philosophy, it's an approach. It's something that one can use talking about improvements, but also it's about designing new products and also services. Yeah, so design thinking is obviously not only about design, it's also about solutions that improve the lives of people. And yeah, the example that was discussed was the design of a park. And yeah, there are two approaches. We can take the perspective of the designer or the architect, or we may take the perspective of the user who uses the park for different, sometimes not obvious reasons. Yeah. So my assumptions, my hypothesis, and this is also which we covered last time, do not have to overlap with what the clients expect or how they actually use the products, and the reasons might be different for that. We also said that the idea of design thinking is to look for solutions that would be something that people actually want, but also this should be ideally the outcomes that are possible to do in an easy and quick way. So something which is feasible and something which is possible to implement, and of course this should make sense financially. So if it's a commercial organization, well, it should be promising profits, profitable. If it's a non-profit organization, it should be cost effective. Yeah, so this is the idea. Okay. And yeah, the five, or we actually said 6 steps in design thinking are empathizing with the user, so putting oneself in their shoes, defining the solution on the basis of findings in the first stage, then coming up with ideas, so ideation or finding solutions, then building a prototype or prototypes, we should say, testing them, and finally preparing implementation plan or planning implementation. This last step is not always mentioned. I think it makes sense because obviously, as we discussed, the solution is as good as it is, if it's working. Yeah, if it stays some idea, of course, it will not fly. Yeah. We also had this metaphor of the iceberg. So this empathize phase, or discovering the user's needs or the client's needs, is something that should take the most of the time and effort and the resources in the project. So before even thinking about possible ideas, how to change things, the effort should go into discovering what the user or what the client really wants. What is it that the customers expect? And this can be done in multiple ways. We talked about asking questions, but it can also be done by observation, and finally through actually putting oneself literally in the shoes of the user. So looking and acting from the perspective of the customer. Otherwise, the risk is that, I can come up with the solution. A lot of time and effort and other resources will go to implementing it, but the users or the clients say, well, that's not what we actually wanted. And now the interesting thing is, because we are of course talking about the customer or the user being in the center, this is sometimes called the human-centered design also. So the human being, the user, the customer, the client is right there. But if we think about who the client or the customer is, there are different roles. And what you can see on the slide, this is the concept taken from marketing. So there are different roles in the purchasing process, and this of course applies to any commercial context. but also in case of some products that are not technically bought, but are used by users, this may also be applicable. So if you think about the user, this is the last role which you can see on the slide. So the user is here, and this makes sense. This is actually the person that uses the product. So if I were to think of students, well, these are actually the people who take part in lessons or courses or use handbooks and other teaching materials. They are the actual users. Are they the buyers? Well, if these are people who are not of age, who cannot use their money, don't have their money, or cannot use their money, mostly, you know, if I think about educational products for people below 18 years old, but also above, this might be their parents. So the buyers or the payers are not necessarily the users, and this applies for a lot of products or services. So the person who pays, that does not necessarily have to be the person who uses the product. Similarly, we have deciders, so people who take decisions. So if I imagine I don't know, parents who have a kid, and they think of an idea. And by the way, having an idea is another role. So there is some initiator, somebody who comes up with just an idea. So let's imagine that we have this family, and they want to send their kid to Italy for the summer language course. So the initiator may be, I don't know, maybe the grandmother, who had spent some nice time in Italy, and she has this idea. Okay, but then you have different offers, different summer courses, and the decider might be the mother, or the father, and the person who pays might be still somebody else. So we can have those roles here. In education, obviously, if you design your own courses, lessons, materials, there will be more roles of that. There will be also some legal limitations. There will be the headmaster of the school. There will be people who design curricula. And we are not actually free to, pick and choose the material. That there is something that we have to follow. And similarly, when it comes to standards, for example, for online courses or teaching materials, that's also part of the picture here. So, although I have my student as a customer or as the user, I also have to take into consideration deciders and gatekeepers. So there will be people who will tell me, okay, what I'm allowed to do, what formats I'm allowed to use, what is the minimum or the maximum of materials that I should, for example, include in my online course. So there will be a lot of other roles here. We also have influencers, and that's an interesting role. So, okay, if we take this example of the language course in Italy, the idea may come from the friends, from the peers of a kid, and they say, okay, my best friend goes, and I want to go as well, right? So the friend will be both the initiator and the influencer. She will be, or he will be, the person who sort of plants this idea in the head of the user, and also maybe influencing the decision of parents indirectly, of course. So why are we discussing that? This is because throughout this, let's say, decision-taking process, I have to be clear to whom I am talking and about whom am I thinking, because obviously I may say, okay, it's the user who is in the center, and this is clearly the focus in design thinking, but there will be also other roles that might be equally important. And sometimes it is also essential, especially in education, to take into account people who are deciders, and we have to take into account the gatekeepers, so we are not totally free to only think about the user in all cases. Yeah. There's also an interesting question, especially in bigger projects, but also in education. So whom do I take into account when I design my educational product, or if I think about my services? Is it, let's say, those statistical users? Yeah, so people who are, let's say, average, yeah? Maybe if you think about the results in education, you know, students with average grades, or if we think about those who are, you know, scoring best, or maybe those who have difficulties. So what is the answer? Ideally, if the project has, let's say, enough resources for that, and we have time and space, we should also include those users from extremes. Yeah, so you know, the students who are really doing well, but also the students with difficulties, and of course we have the average. The same applies for, let's say, frequency with which certain products are used. So if I have an online course or some materials, there will be heavy users and there will be infrequent users and some average. So ideally, yeah, I could, if I were able to, I should include all of them, yeah, in my picture. Of course, the most represented part should be the, let's say, the statistical average, but it's also good to think from, you know, different perspectives. And as we said, and we are going to continue today, the perspective as broad as possible here would be the recommended approach. So yes, so this is about the customer in the center. We also finished with the define phase. So we said, okay, after empathize phase or stage, I have insights from my users or my clients. So I may have observed them, I may have placed myself in their situation. I gathered some inputs in questionnaires, and I have a lot of material. I can arrange those this information in the form of an empathy map. So I imagine my user. Also, I imagine them as a persona. And from there, I go to defining what their pain points are, what kind of benefits they are looking for, and what kind of needs they have. Yeah, and this is called, those needs are called jobs to be done, benefits and pain points are also the part of the picture. So yeah, for example, if I think about some product or service, people, you know, statements like ideally I would like this and that, these are the benefits. Yeah, so these are the things that they are looking for. If they talk about functionalities, these are needs or jobs to be done. So it has to be functional, it has to be easy to access even offline. This is about the needs. And the pain points, these are things that people normally indicate as the ones that they hate, yeah, or they dislike. Yeah, so what bothers me when I use this handbook is that you know, there is too much text and not enough illustrations. So those inputs are categorized and they are grouped according to those three categories, so benefits, pain points, and needs. And from there, we can go to defining the problem. Yeah. So once I have the clarity on the inputs from my users, I can say, all right, how can I improve or do something so that, and I choose something which is essential for the users. And only from there, if we go back to the stages, only from there do I go to the ideate stage. Yeah, so in ideation or solution finding, well, we look for creative ideas on how to solve the problem or the problems of the user. Normally, it happens in sort of two sub-stages or two phases. The first one is I want to think very broadly. This is called divergent thinking in creativity. So I look for quantity rather than quality. So I come with as many ideas as possible. And only afterwards do I sort of sort them out and select the ones which are most promising. Yeah. So there are, of course, numerous creative thinking techniques. In the last presentation, we did not practice, but we mentioned Scamper. So I look for certain, let's say, modifications of a product, and yeah, even if I come with crazy ideas on, for example, on how to put things upside down or how to minimize them or how to enlarge them in scale. From there, I can go to some inspirations and working the ideas into something more practical. Of course, we do brainstorming at this stage, not censoring or not also not discouraging from people from coming up with not very practical ideas. And yeah, some other techniques as well. By the way, metaphorizing, so coming up with a metaphor is another way to look at it. So the exercise we did at the beginning, creativity is like because, is also part of that creative thinking, let's say, process. Now, classic brainstorming, I assume this is something that you are familiar with. We also have silent brainstorming and reverse brainstorming. So these are the two variations, and there are more, but these are the ones you can try. So it may happen that, especially if in a bigger group or in a group where you have people who are very much, there are some people who are extroverted and who tend to dominate the discussion. It's good to let the participants to note down their ideas silently without discussing them with anyone before they are discussed by the whole group. Yeah. So it technically can be done in different ways. The idea is that, for example, people note them down on small post-it notes, and they are then all taken into consideration and they are all discussed. Yeah. Now, why is it done in this way, and what benefits does it offer? It may happen that people who are more introverted and less willing to speak in front of the team, in front of the group, might have really, really good ideas. Yeah. And if someone is hesitant because there are others who are maybe louder or more outspoken, they might censor themselves, and rather than speak up, they would just back off and not say anything. And here the risk is that one may lose those good ideas. And here, if everyone works in silence, this also, by the way, may help those more introverted people to concentrate better. Then we don't lose this brainstorming vibe and the sharing ideas, but still everybody is coming up with their own, and they are not lost. They are all discussed. There's also this reverse brainstorming, and funnily enough, here we ask a question: how to make a situation worse, or how to make a product worse. Yeah. Now, why should we do anything like that? Well, the idea of design thinking is to improve rather than worsen. Well, first thing is sometimes it's easier to think about negative things. Yeah. And this is something that is shaped by the evolution. I mean, we are wired to notice things that bother us or that are not standard or they are not correct. So sometimes it's easier to come up with those ideas. It's also a bit funny because, people may have very creative ideas on how to, make things even worse. And then we've got the whole list of things that we can flip around and work them into improvements. Or alternatively, this could be something that needs fixing, and in a kind of gentle way, without, doing some guilt trips or pointing to to mistakes directly. This also discloses the flaws, I don't know, in the process, in the service, or in the product. So if you want, you might want to try out also reverse brainstorming. Sometimes you can just do it for fun, but a lot of inspiration may come from flipping around those negative thoughts. Yeah. There's also an interesting thing about analogies and inspirations. So here we've got a lot of variations. Yeah, we can think, for example, of a famous brand. Yeah, if I have a product to improve. By the way, it does not have to be necessarily the same industry or the same group of products. Maybe something totally different. People may come up with their favorite brands and list what kind of values they bring, why they like them. And then we have our product or service, and we sort of think, okay, if this was an Apple product, or if this was Starbucks service, how could we improve it? What kind of inspiration could we take from there? Yeah, what kind of values could we sort of transpose to our product? And that's one way of doing those analogies. Another thing is we can take inspiration from famous historical figures. Yeah, so we can say, all right, how would Napoleon solve this problem, or how would prehistoric people do that differently, or what would I don't know, for example, the zookeeper do with that, yeah, or dinosaur. So we try to think from a different perspective about the same problem, and this is especially useful if the team is stuck. Yeah, so okay, sometimes it goes really well with brainstorming, but sometimes for some reasons the team may be stuck. So we take a different perspective. Yeah, and it's also something that can be done for fun. So the idea here is to have diverse teams and as a result diverse perspectives. We talked about it last time, so it's good if there is a design thinking project, it's good to incorporate in the team and invite for the discussions not only the designers, the participants of the process, I don't know, employees of the company, in our case other teachers maybe, but it's also good to think about somebody else who is not even directly involved in in providing the service, for example. Yeah, so I don't know, it may be the secretary in the school, or it might be the person who is the supplier. Maybe, if possible, this could contribute to a different thinking. So this first stage, coming up with a lot of ideas, so many, without worrying about how practical or feasible or possible to implement they are, comes after that comes the stage of categorizing and selecting ideas. So the third stage is called divergent thinking. So I think we think broadly, we don't censor, we don't worry about the outcomes. But then comes this convergent phase. So ideas are categorized and selected. And there are different ways on how to approach categorizing ideas. We can say, all right, there are certain ideas that are just crazy, and we know that they might be there, they are funny, but it's not something that we can do with them, yeah, and we just sort of park them. There are also ideas which are crazy, yeah, and maybe they are not rational, or they are not possible to implement right now, but we can take some inspiration from them, yeah. So we can take a bit and say, all right, this this sounds like science fiction, but there is a grain that we can reuse and reshape to come up with a plausible idea. So we will have the ones which are parked, the ones which may be the source of inspiration, and there will be also the ones which are very easy to implement and don't even require a project. Yeah, so they're like low-hanging fruit or quick wins, and some of them might just be there. We just put them on an action list. They are tiny improvements. We don't have to even worry about projects. We just improve them as we go. Yeah. So the example I can think of, somebody pointing out to, for example, the font, the size of the font. Yeah, why not just do it? It's a quick win. It's a simple thing to do. And the ones we are looking for at this stage, when categorizing, we are looking for ideas with potential. Yeah. So if you remember from this previous slide, if we have ideas which commercially or cost-wise make sense, and they would be appreciated by the users, and they are also doable, yeah, because of the technology or materials or resources we have, this is where this is what we are looking for. These are the ideas with potential. It can be more than one, obviously. So we can have, in this category, more than one, and we can still down select them to maybe one or two or three, or we may continue at this stage with those, especially if they are possible to be combined in one improvement or one project or one service. There will still be a chance to cut down on improvements in the last planning phase. So at this stage, I think it's still something we can afford to do, because the assumption is we have those ideas which are possible to implement, yeah, at least potentially. Now, the important thing to have in mind here is that the way creativity works, it's a lot about combinations and inspirations. So it's not that I have to come up with something totally new. In fact, this kind of creativity is very hard to achieve, like inventing really something breakthrough invention. I mean, how many can we have? Most of them are just improvements of what has been done already, or variations or combinations. Yeah, it is said that AI works in this way. It has this combinatory creativity. It can combine things, and this adds new quality or new value. But it's really hard to come up with something entirely new. But that's okay, and that's how a lot of innovations work. So I wouldn't, put pressure on the team to come up with something revolutionary. And in fact, a lot of design thinking projects do not end up in revolutions. It's rather evolution and smaller improvements. So this is it about ideation, and this is it about coming up with solutions. And once we have those potential ideas in hand, we can go to prototyping, and testing, which are next stages or phases of the process. Now, to be honest, for a long time, I could not figure it out why I need to have a prototype. Yeah, I mean, and we are talking about the physical prototype. I will tell you what kind of prototype in a moment, but I said, okay, if I have an idea, why don't I just describe it to the user? Why do I have to show them? Yeah, why do I have to prepare something? And the idea in design thinking is that I prepare something makeshift and messy. We are not talking here about the prototyping for production, which is actually the end product. We are talking about something which is, not very, maybe not even looking very nice. We're talking about something that will illustrate the point, yeah? And now if I show you some of the prototypes done in my classes, this is exactly what they look like, yeah? They are made of cardboard and waste paper. They don't look very, very, sort of like finished products. Maybe the one on the left here looks nicer, but other than that, this is something which is done very quickly at a low cost, and doesn't really take much effort, yeah. But the idea is that I have to have something to show to the user, yeah. So rather than describing, I show, yeah. And it is said that the picture is worth more than thousands of words, and maybe there is something in it, yeah. So I illustrate, even if it's just something messy or something makeshift. It gives an idea of what it is going to look like or how it is going to work. If it's interactive, even better. Why not? Actually, this particular prototype, this was prepared by a group of students. This was supposed to be a prototype of a waiter robot, and it had built-in AI agent, so you could actually talk to it and ask for recommendations in a restaurant. Yeah, so it was even interactive, right? Now, the reasons why those prototypes are done in the design thinking, and this is an important process, are the following. The first thing is, when I prepare the prototype with my team, I can already spot some issues and maybe come up with solutions already, or I can come up with new ideas and work on them as I prepare it. So something may look perfect in theory, but in practice, if I see it, I already can correct myself. Yeah, this is the first thing. Now, the second thing is creativity is a lot about doing things with our hands, yeah, and with all the super technology we have, somehow this gets people thinking better, yeah. So once you have it, and even if these are small things, a lot of things are improved on the way because some new ideas appear. And finally, it lets the user realize, if it's really what they wanted or not, right? So they, just a glance, and they already can point to the things they like or they don't, right? So this is how it works. And prototypes may be very different. Here we have those kind of models, let's say, and they are miniatures. So these are the small versions of the robots that could be produced, but that's okay. So here it's not about the scale, like real life scale, but or the full scale, but just to give an idea. This can be storyboards. So if I have a process, for example, enrollment for online language course, yeah, this will give me the steps and illustrate what happens. This can be a sketch, and sometimes it's very messy, just a sketch. So for example, the interface or what the web page will look like, it's also done actually in hand, by hand, right? It's a drawing. And finally, it could be even a role play, yeah? So somebody will, play the role of a secretary, yeah, for example, at a summer language school, and somebody will play the role of the client. And then, you let the user experience of how it would work if they would, if they were to come and be greeted, for example, by the receptionist or the secretary. So those options are here. Yeah, it can be the model, it can be the storyboard, it can be the role play, it can be a sketch. Yeah, but it has to be something, you know, tangible, something you can touch. Yeah, and also when you produce it, you don't produce it online, you produce it in real life, which is why it's hard to you know, teach design thinking only through online classes. Yeah, so a lot of that just happens while working on the product. Okay, so this is about prototypes. Now, when we have the prototype ready, of course, there is the time to ask the users what they think about it. And it's a very simple exercise. It may not be very pleasant because, of course, a lot of effort has gone into you know, preparing the solution and prototyping. But the idea is, okay, even if I hear something that the user doesn't like, yeah, I can easily, you know, prepare a new prototype. This is something which doesn't cost me much time, shouldn't cost me much money. So it's something, you know, if needed to be improved or even destroyed, and I start anew if I hear the feedback from the user. And how do I ask the feedback from the user or the client? It's very simple. I ask them about what they like, so what works for them. I ask them about where, you know, where they don't like it, so what is missing. I also ask them if they have questions or maybe doubts, and I ask them for suggestions for improvement or suggestions that they have in general. So what they like, what they would change, what questions they have, and what suggestions they could come up with. So this is about prototyping and testing, and we shall finish off with implementation. So implementation is when I plan, you know, what I will do step by step to make my idea live. Yeah. So again, sometimes it may happen that those ideas are there, the prototype is there, we have got the feedback from the user, but somehow, you know, things don't get done in reality. And yeah, that basically covers it. The plans may be, you know, very small thing and very simple. It can be just a Gantt chart, or it might be just an email summarizing who does what and by when. It might be defining the next few steps, but that's it. That's basically enough when it comes to planning. All right, so let me summarize what we covered in this part. Okay, so having summarized the initial phases and the principles of design thinking, such as making things, you know, realistic from the financial perspective, and also practical and desired by the user, we talked about the stages. Here we also have the implementation. So we also revised the idea and the metaphor of the iceberg. Please remember about different roles. So the user or the customer, it's a lot to have in mind. We revised the define stage, and we came to ideation or finding solutions. It's a lot about thinking creatively, thinking out of the box, using different techniques, and preferably with diverse team members. So after thinking broadly and without any, let's say, censorship, we come down to solutions. They don't have to be breakthrough or very new or totally new. It's enough if we have, you know, inspirations or combinations of idea that had been there so far. We also do the prototype. This is an essential part of the design thinking. the prototypes are in principle messy and makeshift, and they allow to fail quickly and at a low cost, and improve also in the perspective of the user needs. And the user needs are discussed in the testing phase when they actually see the prototype. The first exercise would be about, a short discussion about possible benefits of the approach. And obviously we are taking the perspective of educators here, teaching and materials. So there will be around 25 minutes to do this exercise, to do this discussion, to think about which parts of design thinking, or maybe even the whole approach, can be applicable in your work. What will follow would be some thinking about prototyping. So we should do the, let's say, a revision of what has been just discussed in the theory part. There are some questions to answer, but there is also a quick thinking time about how prototyping can be used in a classroom. We will also talk about design itself. So although design thinking is not solely concentrating on the, let's say, on the looks of things or how they are designed in interactive context, well, this is an important part of what contributes to good learning nowadays, and this will be the longer exercise. And finally, there will be a true or false test. So I hope you did listen carefully, because we are going to summarize the whole design thinking approach in those questions.